I walked into the wrong hospital room at 2 a.m. The person inside wasn't supposed to be alive. You'd think working night shifts as a nurse would get boring after a while. Same hallways, same beeping machines, same routine checks. But what happened to me during one ordinary Tuesday night shift proved that life can surprise you in the most unexpected ways. I was just doing my job, checking on patients like I'd done 1,000 times before. But when I pushed open the door to room 412 instead of room 421, I had no idea I was about to meet someone who would completely change how I saw the world, teach me what it means to truly live, and eventually become the most important person in my life. It was February, around 2 a.m. The hospital was quiet except for the usual sounds of monitors and the occasional cough echoing down the halls. I'd been pulling double shifts that week because 2 nurses had called in sick with the flu. My eyes were heavy, my feet hurt, and honestly, I was running on pure caffeine and muscle memory. I was supposed to check on Mrs. Kim in room 421, an elderly woman recovering from hip surgery. But exhaustion got the better of me. I read the chart wrong and walked into room 412 instead. The room was dark except for the glow of a single monitor. I expected to find someone sleeping peacefully. Instead, there was this young woman, maybe in her late 20s, sitting up in bed with a sketchbook balanced on her lap. She was drawing by the light of her phone, her long black hair falling over her shoulders like a waterfall. When I walked in, she didn't even look startled. She just looked up at me with these deep, brown eyes that seemed to carry both sadness and hope at the same time, and smiled like she'd been expecting company. And I swear, even in that dim light, even in a faded hospital gown with IV lines running into her arm, she had the most beautiful smile I'd ever seen. I apologized immediately, feeling my face heat up with embarrassment. I explained I had the wrong room, that I was supposed to be next door. But before I could turn around and leave, she said something in this soft, gentle voice that stopped me cold. "It's okay. Nobody really comes in here much anyway. They've kind of given up on me." The way she said it wasn't bitter or angry or sad. It was just matter of fact, like she was telling me what she had for dinner or commenting on the weather outside. But I could hear the loneliness underneath those words, the weight of isolation, and it broke something inside me. I should have left right then. I had actual patients waiting for their medication. I had charts to update and vital signs to check. But something about her, about the way she sat there, alone in the darkness, with only her drawings for company, made me stay. I walked closer to her bed and introduced myself properly. I asked her name. She said it was May, just May. Simple and beautiful, like everything else about her. I asked what she was drawing, and she hesitated for a second before showing me. It was this incredible sketch of a sunset over mountains, with clouds that looked so real I felt like I could reach out and touch them. The detail was insane. Every shadow perfectly placed, every line deliberate and full of emotion. I told her it was beautiful and she smiled again, but this time her eyes got a little watery. She told me she'd never actually seen a mountain in real life. She'd been in and out of hospitals since she was 16. Chronic illness had basically stolen her 20s, her youth, her freedom. Every dream she'd ever had was on pause, stuck in a waiting room, hoping for a body that wouldn't cooperate. May had a rare autoimmune condition that doctors were still trying to figure out. It was one of those diseases that medical textbooks barely mentioned, the kind that left specialists scratching their heads and ordering test after test with no clear answers. She'd been through countless treatments, experimental drugs that made her violently sick, and more hospital stays than she could count. Her immune system was basically attacking her own body, treating her organs like enemies that needed to be destroyed. The pain was constant. Some days it was manageable. Other days it felt like her bones were on fire. Her parents worked at a small restaurant 2 hours away and could only afford to visit on Sundays. They'd call every night, but phone calls can't replace physical presence. Can't replace a hug when you're scared and alone. Her younger brother was in college, studying engineering, and barely had time to call between classes and part-time jobs. Most of her friends from high school had slowly disappeared over the years because it's hard to maintain friendships when you're always sick, when you have to cancel plans at the last minute, when you can't relate to their problems about dating and careers because you're just trying to survive another day. The loneliness in her eyes hit me harder than any medical emergency I'd ever faced. Here was someone fighting for her life every single day, battling pain that would break most people, and she was doing it completely alone. That first night, I stayed in her room for almost 30 minutes, way longer than I should have. We talked about her drawings, about the fantasy book she was writing on her phone during sleepless nights. She told me the story was about a girl who could paint portals to other worlds, who could escape reality by creating new ones with just a brush and some colors. I didn't need her to explain the metaphor. I understood completely. She told me about how she used to dance before she got sick, how she'd spent years in ballet classes dreaming of performing on big stages. She told me about the street food she craved from her childhood, the night markets her grandmother used to take her to where the air smelled like grilled meat and sweet pastries. She told me about all the places she wanted to visit someday. Japan during cherry blossom season, the northern lights in Iceland, a small cafe in Paris where she could sit and sketch people passing by. I came back the next night, and the night after that. At first I told myself it was just to check on her, to make sure she was okay, to do my job properly. But deep down I knew it was more than that. There was something about May that drew me in, something magnetic and impossible to ignore. It started as just 5 or 10-minute check-ins during my breaks. I'd bring her jasmine tea from the vending machine on the 3rd floor because she said hospital coffee tasted like sadness, mixed with regret. She'd show me her new drawings, and we'd talk about everything except her illness. Books we'd read, movies we loved, childhood memories that made us laugh. She told me about the time she tried to dye her hair purple in middle school and it came out green instead. She told me about her first crush, a boy who played guitar and never noticed she existed. She told me about her grandmother, who raised her while her parents worked long hours, who taught her how to make dumplings from scratch, and told her stories about growing up in a different country with different rules. Her grandmother had passed away 3 years ago, and May said that was when she felt the loneliness really set in. The one person who always had time for her was gone. I shared my stories too. I told her about why I became a nurse, how my little sister had been sick when we were kids and the nurses who took care of her became my heroes. I told her about my failed relationships, about how I'd always put work first and never made time for love. I told her about my fear of ending up alone, of working myself to death in this hospital and having nothing to show for it except exhausted feet and patient charts. Somewhere between those late-night conversations and shared cups of terrible vending machine tea, somewhere between her showing me her art and me bringing her books from the hospital library, I fell in love with her. It wasn't some dramatic moment. It wasn't love at first sight. It was gradual, like watching the sun rise. One moment it's dark and then slowly, almost without you noticing, everything is filled with light. It happened on a random Thursday night. May was telling me about a dream she'd had where she could fly, and the way her face lit up when she described soaring over cities and oceans made my heart skip. I realized I wanted to see that face light up every single day for the rest of my life. I realized that her laugh had become my favorite sound in the entire world. I realized that I'd started measuring my days by whether or not I'd get to see her, talk to her, make her smile. But I knew it was complicated. I knew the rules about getting involved with patients. I knew how messy it could get, how my job could be at risk, how people would judge us. But May wasn't just a patient to me anymore. She was this incredible person who faced each day with courage I couldn't even imagine. She was someone who found beauty in the smallest things despite living in constant pain. The way moonlight hit her window at 3 a.m., a perfectly brewed cup of tea, a conversation that made her forget about the needles and medications for just a little while. She taught me that strength isn't about never breaking down, Never crying, never showing weakness. It's about getting back up every single time, even when you don't think you can, even when staying down seems easier. Other nurses started noticing. Some would give me knowing looks when I'd disappear into room 412 during my breaks. A few made comments about how I seemed happier lately, how I actually smiled during shifts now. My supervisor, a stern woman named Patricia who'd been a nurse for 30 years, pulled me aside one evening and warned me to be careful. She didn't say it meanly. She said it like someone who'd seen this happen before, who'd seen nurses get too attached and get hurt. She told me to not let my emotions cloud my judgment, to remember that patients come and go, but my career was permanent. Maybe she was right to worry. Maybe I was crossing lines that shouldn't be crossed. But May didn't have anyone else showing up for her every night. She didn't have friends visiting with flowers and balloons. She didn't have a partner holding her hand through the scary moments. And honestly, those conversations with her, those quiet hours spent in room 412, they became the only reason I looked forward to my shifts. She reminded me why I became a nurse in the first place. Not just to treat symptoms and administer medications, but to care for actual human beings who are scared and alone and fighting battles nobody else can see. The hardest part was watching her suffer through the bad days. Days when the pain was so intense, she couldn't even hold a pencil to sketch. When her hands shook too much and tears rolled down her face from pure exhaustion. Days when experimental treatments made her so sick she could barely lift her head off the pillow, when she'd throw up everything she tried to eat, and her skin took on this grayish color that terrified me. Days when she'd cry and tell me she was tired of fighting, tired of hoping for a miracle that might never come, tired of being a burden to everyone around her. On those days, all I could do was hold her hand and promise her she wasn't alone, that I'd be there no matter what, that she wasn't a burden, that she mattered, that the world was better with her in it. I'd read to her from her favorite books when she was too tired to keep her eyes open. I'd play soft music from my phone when the hospital sounds got too overwhelming. I'd just sit there in silence when she didn't have the energy to talk, letting her know that presence alone could be enough. On her worst night, about 3 months after we'd met, her fever spiked to dangerous levels. Her blood pressure dropped. Alarms started going off, and suddenly, her room was flooded with doctors and nurses. Everyone moving fast and shouting medical terms I understood but wished I didn't. I was pushed out into the hallway. I stood outside room 412 with my heart in my throat, my hands shaking, praying to whatever God or universe or force was out there to please let her stay. Let her fight through this. Let her survive. I'd never been religious. I'd seen too much suffering in hospitals to believe in a benevolent higher power. But that night, I prayed harder than I'd ever prayed for anything. I made bargains with the universe. I promised I'd be better, do better, help more people if they'd just let her live. The 20 minutes I stood in that hallway felt like 20 hours. Every second was agony. When the doctors finally came out and told me she'd stabilized, that she was going to be okay, I actually fell to my knees right there in the hallway. I didn't care who saw. I didn't care about looking professional. Relief washed over me so intensely I couldn't stand. That night changed everything. I realized I couldn't keep pretending this was just friendly concern, just a nurse caring about a patient. I was completely, utterly, desperately in love with May. And the thought of losing her, of a world without her in it, was unbearable. The next time I visited her, after she'd recovered enough to talk, I told her the truth. I told her I'd fallen in love with her. I told her that she'd become the most important person in my life. I told her I understood if she didn't feel the same way, if the timing was wrong, if she just saw me as her nurse. But I needed her to know. She looked at me with those deep brown eyes, and tears started falling down her cheeks. For a terrifying second, I thought I'd made a horrible mistake. But then she smiled and said, "I've been in love with you since the second week you started visiting me. I just thought someone like you could never love someone like me. Someone broken." I took her hand and told her she wasn't broken. She was the strongest, most beautiful person I'd ever met. And if she'd have me, I wanted to be with her through everything. The good days and the bad days. The hospital stays and hopefully eventually, the life outside these walls. Then came the breakthrough we'd been desperately hoping for, after weeks of new tests and consultations with specialists from across the country, even flying in a doctor from Boston who'd been studying May's specific condition for years. Her medical team found a treatment combination that actually worked. It was a mix of medications, some old and some experimental, that finally started to get her immune system under control. The change was slow. Nothing about healing ever happens quickly, but it was real. She started having more good days than bad ones. The pain levels decreased from unbearable to manageable. The color returned to her face, replacing that grayish tone with a healthy glow. Her smile reached her eyes again, genuine and full of hope instead of forced and tired. She started sketching more, filling notebook after notebook with drawings of all the places she wanted to go, all the things she wanted to do. She started talking about the future like it was actually something she could have, something she could touch and taste and live. 6 months later, on a sunny afternoon in August, Mai was finally discharged from the hospital. I helped her pack up her room. That same room 412 where we'd first met, where we'd fallen in love surrounded by beeping machines and antiseptic smells. She carefully packed all her sketchbooks, all the books I'd brought her, the dried flowers her parents had given her on one of their Sunday visits. When the room was empty except for the standard hospital furniture, we both just stood there for a moment, taking it in. This room had been her prison and her home. It had been the site of her worst pain and her greatest hope. It had been where we'd found each other. She was crying, and so was I. She hugged me so tight I thought she'd never let go. And honestly, I never wanted her to. She whispered in my ear, "You walked into the wrong room and saved my life." I whispered back, "You saved mine too." We started dating officially after she left the hospital. Real dates, not just conversations in a hospital room. Our first real date, I took her to see those mountains she'd been drawing for years. We drove 3 hours to a national park, and we hiked one of the easier trails. We had to stop every few minutes so she could catch her breath, so her legs could rest. Her stamina wasn't fully back yet, but she insisted on making it to the top. And when we finally got there, when she stood at the summit with the whole world spread out below us, she spread her arms wide like she was trying to hug the sky. Tears streamed down her face, but she was laughing at the same time. She spun in a circle, taking in every angle, every view. She told me she never thought she'd live to see this moment. She never thought her body would let her feel this free, this alive, this possible. I took a photo of her in that moment, with the mountains behind her and pure joy on her face. It's still my phone background today. Over the next year, we made up for lost time. I took her to night markets where we ate too much food and she sketched the vendors. We went to art museums where she'd stand in front of paintings for 20 minutes, studying every brushstroke. We went to the beach and she felt ocean, water on her feet for the first time in a decade. We went to concerts and she cried during the slow songs. We did all the normal things she'd missed out on, and every single experience felt magical because I got to watch her discover it all. 2 years after that first night in room 412, I took her back to those mountains. We hiked that same trail, but this time she made it to the top faster, stronger. Her body had healed so much. When we reached the summit, I got down on one knee. I had a whole speech planned. I'd practiced it for weeks. But when I looked up at her, with the sunset painting the sky behind her in oranges and pinks, all I could say was, "May, you're the strongest person I know. You taught me what it means to really live, to find joy even in darkness, to never give up even when everything seems impossible. I want to spend the rest of my life proving to you that you're worth fighting for. Will you marry me?" She said yes before I even finished the question. She tackled me into a hug so enthusiastic we almost rolled down the mountain. The ring I'd carefully picked out almost fell out of my shaking hands. But it didn't matter. Nothing mattered except her saying yes, except knowing we'd get to build a life together. Last month we got married. We didn't have the ceremony in some fancy venue or expensive hotel. We got married in the hospital chapel, the same hospital where we met. The same building that had been both our greatest challenge and our greatest blessing. May wore a simple white dress that made her look like something out of a dream. Her parents walked her down the aisle together, both of them crying so hard they could barely see. Her brother, who'd flown in from across the country, gave a speech about how I'd given his sister her life back. Some of the nurses who'd taken care of May during her darkest days were there too. Patricia, my old supervisor who'd warned me about getting too attached. She was there in the front row with tears in her eyes and a smile on her face. When we exchanged vows, I promised May that I would love her through every season, through the good days when her health was stable, and through the hard days when her illness flared up, through the mornings when she woke up pain-free, and through the nights when the pain kept her awake, through every mountain we'd climb and every hospital room we might have to face again. She promised me that she would never stop fighting, never stop finding beauty in the small things, never stop teaching me what it means to truly live. She promised me adventures and art and love that would last beyond our lifetimes. When we had our first dance right there in that chapel, swaying to a slow song while our loved ones watched, May whispered in my ear, "You walked into the wrong room and changed everything." I pulled her closer and whispered back, "No, I walked into exactly the right room." The universe knew what it was doing that night. Today, 3 years after I first walked into room 412, May still has hard days. Her illness doesn't just disappear because we fell in love. It doesn't vanish because we got our happy ending. Some mornings she wakes up in pain. Some days she needs to rest more than she wants to. Some nights her medications make her sick. But the difference is now she doesn't face those days alone. We face them together. Every morning when I wake up next to her, when I watch her sketch in the early light streaming through our bedroom window, when I see her smile over breakfast or hear her laugh at something stupid, I said, I'm reminded that sometimes the greatest love stories don't start with a perfect meeting in a perfect place. They don't start with love at first sight or grand romantic gestures. Sometimes they start with a tired nurse making a mistake, with a wrong room number and exhaustion, and a door opening to someone you never expected to find. Sometimes they start with a girl sitting alone in the darkness, drawing mountains she thought she'd never see, holding on to hope when everyone else had let go. And sometimes that mistake, that wrong turn, that moment of pure chance, becomes the best thing that ever happened to you. Because the wrong door can lead you to exactly the right person, the person who teaches you what love really means. The person who shows you that strength isn't about never falling, it's about always getting back up. The person who reminds you every single day that life, even with all its pain and challenges, is absolutely worth living. May is sitting across from me right now as I tell you this story, sketching our cat who's sprawled across the couch. She looks up and catches me staring at her. She smiles that same smile she gave me in room 412 all those years ago, and my heart still skips a beat. And I think about how I almost walked past that room, how I almost corrected my mistake and left her sitting there alone. How different my life would be if I hadn't stayed. But I did stay, and she stayed too, fighting through every impossible day. And now we get to build a life together, full of mountains and art and jasmine tea and love that survived the darkest nights. A life that started because I walked into the wrong room and found the right person, and I would make that same mistake 1,000 times over if it meant finding her again.